Good afternoon. My name is Eric Carlson. We're in the home stretch here, so we're going to have a short conversation about fundraising and communications and partnerships. I've had the incredible privilege of working with Robert Levine and Doreen Markle in this area with an incredible team at MTMVI. So we're going to cover a lot of territory in a short amount of time. I want to hold my opening comments till the end. And so what we're going to do is switch the panel around a little bit. We're going to talk about fundraising and development first, and then the second half of it, we're lucky enough to have the head of entertainment and media from Stand Up to Cancer here today. So we're going to get an inside peek behind some of these organizations. Stand Up to Cancer, as you know, is a 16-and-a-half-year-old organization, has had incredible success partnering within entertainment and media. So I'll start to bring the panel up. The first panelist is Sandra Puczynski. Sandra is a member of the Lay Advisory Committee. Sandra, do you want to come up? For the Mary Tyler Moore Vision Initiative, Dr. Puczynski has over 25 years experience leading clinical research and regulatory programs, various academic institutions, and has administered many clinical trials funded by NIH, DOD, and industry. Secondly is Chris. Oh, Chris is here. Chris joined Michigan Medicine in early 2018, overseeing DCI departments, centers, and institutes and surgery teams. These teams include the areas of the departments as internal medicine, Kellogg Eye Center, transplant surgery, cardiovascular center, orthopedics, and family medicine at Michigan Medicine. Betsy Coates, who is joining us by Zoom. I don't know if she's up on the screen yet. Betsy, in September 2019, joined Joslin Diabetes Center as the new Chief Development Officer. Betsy has nearly 30 years in Boston-based philanthropy experience, much which was working at Harvard Medical School affiliated healthcare settings. She's a proven philanthropic executive that has strategic fundraising grounded in strong internal and external mentorship partnerships. Last but not least, my friend, Maureen Slutsky. Maureen, come on up. Maureen is head of Stand Up to Cancer Entertainment and Media Relations. She began her career at the Entertainment Industry Foundation in 2005. She worked in media communications, public relations for Stand Up to Cancer, Saks Fifth Avenue, Key to the Cure, EIF's Revlon Run, Diabetes Aware, and the Lee National Denim Day. So Maureen has a lot of experience in this area. So we're going to do a Q&A first, and I welcome questions at the end. But Chris, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your job here at Michigan Medicine? And this is a two-point question. How do you engage people and corporations with what you do in fundraising?
Sure. Well, I lead grateful patient fundraising at Michigan Medicine. Rather than all the areas that we work in, that's the main focus every day is how do we work with patients and engage them in philanthropy. So I think a lot about, this, just what is an appropriate way to engage patients in the work that we do at Michigan Medicine, at least. And the second question was, how do we engage corporations and people?
And corporations and people directly.
I mean, I focus mostly on people. We have a whole corporate team that focuses on engaging corporations, and there's an ethical way to do that. And we're a state institution, so there's lots of things to navigate there. On the grateful patient side, we talk a lot about ethics and making sure we're walking a very firm line ethically with patients. I think there's a feeling that sometimes development people are waiting out in the bushes outside the hospital, hoping we can shake down a patient to support research. And that's just not at all how it happens.
Just every day.
Yeah, right. Every day we're just hanging out in the parking lot. But honestly, we are people. There are a few of us here in the room. I have some colleagues in the back, and we're really people who want to form genuine relationships with people and help them achieve something good. And at Michigan Medicine, we can do a lot of good things. So we're a good place to invest in. And so we're focused mainly on how do we develop genuine relationships with people that are meaningful for them and for us. Yeah.
Sandra, can you talk a little bit about your connection to diabetes first?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier today, and most people know.
Yeah, Mike.
Most people know that I have a daughter that was born with type 1 diabetes. Well, she was 11 months old when she was diagnosed, but God knows when those antibodies started to form. She's 40 years old today and doing pretty well, has retinopathy. And soon after she was diagnosed, we lived in Chicago at the time. I moved to Pittsburgh. I started a group called Parents of Little Ones where I tried to engage the community of Pittsburgh who had young children with type 1 diabetes to get together to get to know each other and share our experiences. From that, I helped found the Pittsburgh chapter of the JDRF, now called Breakthrough Type 1, but that chapter is now called the Western Pennsylvania chapter, and it is one of the most successful chapters in the country and the world. And from there, I became involved. I chaired the lay review committee for JDRF International for 10 years, was chair of research for 3 years after that, and served on the international board of directors for 6 years. And, it just became part of my life. I was a full-time mom, full-time graduate student, full-time employee at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. So it was a busy time, but the experience of having a child with diabetes so young, it just drives you so hard to want to make life better for your child, but also to make life better for all of our children.
Betsy, can you talk a little bit about your job at Joslin? And we talked about this earlier. And, can you tell me how you communicate with donors and how philanthropy works? You had a great answer when we were talking about that, about how your perception of how philanthropy works.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you. Is the volume okay? Can everyone hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. So my job at Joslin as Vice President of Philanthropy is to oversee all philanthropic gifts to the organization. My concentration is predominantly in principal and major gifts, but I oversee corporation and foundations, planned giving, special event fundraising, which some of you were able to join us for on this past Saturday evening for our gala, and also looking at even the direct mail responses. So everything from $1 up to 7- and 8-figure gifts, I'm responsible for managing that process, making sure that our donors' wishes are in fact adhered to and then stewarded. And I think one of the things when Eric and I were speaking earlier that really struck with him with regard to how philanthropy works is it's really high risk, high reward opportunity, particularly for our faculty who are doing research. If philanthropy provides the flexibility of funding that otherwise wouldn't be achieved through the NIH or other federal grants, we are able to secure really transformational gifts from high wealth individuals that are invested in the work that we're doing, who really want to have a change and an impact. And to echo what Chris was saying earlier, the development people really want to establish trusting relationships with grateful patients and others that are interested in our work. And being fully transparent about that and bonding and establishing relationships that are long-term make philanthropy much less of a transactional relationship and one of growth and opportunity to really transport the work that's happening into, potentially data that does qualify for NIH grant funding that at the time when the philanthropy comes through, it's really high risk, high reward.
Sandra, is there something missing when it comes to raising money as it relates to the patient?
Is there something missing?
You remember we talked about that you were going to tell me, you were talking about what is missing as it relates directly to patient advocacy
Well,
and raising money. What is not being done that is?
specifically to DRD?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, I don't remember being asked. So, it's one thing to try to raise money to solve a health problem. But if the people who have the problem don't even know they have the problem, the opportunity to fundraise on that to make a meaningful change in somebody's life, I think that's why people who are affected by disease are generous and were willing to contribute to causes that they think are either going to have a meaningful difference in their life or their loved one's life. I think in the case of DRD, we have a lot of work to do at building awareness. Again, I'm going to say that the report that Jennifer and others in this room highlighted this last month about the prevalence of DRD in young type 1 and type 2 patients. That's remarkable. If you get that information out to the community, it might raise awareness. It might raise volunteer opportunities for parents that would like to get involved in overcoming that. It might then lead to what I would call a natural philosophy of contributing to causes that they'll care about.
Is that why there's a dearth of fundraising in DRD, is just the awareness part of it, that not enough people know?
Well, I think that's certainly one. I think there's a lot of competition in that, in the world of diabetes research funding. We have some remarkable organizations, including JDRF, who is, to my knowledge, the one non-governmental agency that has raised more money for diabetes research than anybody else in the world. And I find that a remarkable, but a decades-long effort, largely built on the back of parents who had young ones with type 1 diabetes.
Chris, we talked about a little earlier, kind of with, you have a lot of tools here at the University of Michigan, you have a lot of resources and assets. What's working right now in terms of your ability to be successful in fundraising, and what's not working right now? If you don't mind sharing both of those.
Yeah, I'll try. I have team members in the back who hear me talk about this all the time, so you can roll your eyes in the back. But mainly, I focus on very simple things in our line of work, which is people give to people. The things that work are when you feel like you really know somebody and you trust them and you believe in their work. So in our case, we're dealing with a lot of patients who develop gratitude and believe in the provider or the provider's colleagues to advance the work. So we hold small dialogue dinners that where we'll have a grateful patient share their story. We've seen a couple patient stories here that are very moving, and we invite people who have the means to help us move it forward. That works really well, generally speaking, most of the time. What's not working?
What have you tried in the past that you thought would kind of engage a community?
Yeah, I say this with all due respect, that I think galas are starting to fade away a little bit. It depends on the disease and the focus, but I think we're seeing a lot of hours and time and effort put into galas that have an ROI of a few $100,000, and that's a lot, or maybe millions, and that's a lot. I'm not, but you could work with a few donors and spend a fraction amount of time and effort. And there's value to galas in terms of mass people, and I'm not. I just think we're seeing a reduction in the amount of galas. Sorry.
Betsy, you're speaking to kind of a dedicated audience right now, scientists and researchers, and what can they do? We were talking about that, but how can you explain to them to help you do your job more effectively?
This is just such a great question, and I'm so happy to take the opportunity to really flush out, I think, what I would call big and bold ideas. We're looking for things that are truly transformative, that will inspire not only grateful patients, but other people within the world of diabetes who really want to accelerate and advance and find hope in seeking a cure. So when I'm looking to talk with, and I agree with Chris, the best ROI is going to be the $1 million gift that you bring in having a cup of coffee with a grateful patient. We want more of that. But what we need to have from our faculty is the answer to the question, if it's ever presented to them, what would you do with the $10 million gift? And I encourage everyone to think really large like that, because philanthropy can, in fact, bring you into that next iteration. But we want to be looking for something that is high risk, high reward, and very inspiring to the folks that are invested in eradicating this disease that impacts so many people.
So we we have a limited amount of time. I've asked this question to all three of you because it came up in our earlier discussions, and I kind of loved it, and I think people will like to. So Betsy, let's stay with you for a second. What is psychological giving?
I think, psychological giving is in fact the empowerment that they, as Chris has mentioned, have started to form relationships and have trust and full transparency that the dollars that they're gifting are in fact being well stewarded. Long gone are the days when I first started in this career that someone would give you money and just trust that you were going to do the best thing with it possible. There really is a partnership now with our grateful patients and others that are giving significant dollars that success will beget success. And they want to be in, not partnership in the lab, but we bring people through for tours, we have visits, we let them look in the microscope and see the beta cells and talk about the work that's happening. It's really a great translation to be able to bring it down to a lay person's level to help them to understand the impact. And I think that psychological giving is them knowing that although they may not be conducting the research, they're advancing it in ways because of the wealth that they've accrued, and in turn, philanthropically are making an investment in the work that happens at Joslin Diabetes every day.
Sandra? Yeah.
What is psychological giving?
Yeah.
That is the first time I've ever heard that term, because I think
Besides the time I asked you this morning.
well, I would say it's emotional giving. I mean, I think that what are the ways that people feel like they're making a difference, whether it's a loved one's difference or people they care about or something they really care about deeply that might change the world, is an emotional response to a need.
Chris?
I have a Catholic mother, so mainly it's driven by guilt, Eric. So I think some people give out of guilt. I think some people want to give due to influence. They would like to influence others, or they are influenced by others. Reciprocity, we talk a lot about reciprocity in grateful patient giving, that something meaningful has happened to you, you would like to provide something of meaning back, but not because you feel like you have to, I think it's so driven by emotion and a little bit of shame and guilt.
So I promised a few people I wouldn't ask this question, but I have to ask this because if you have an answer, any of the three of you, four of you have an answer for this one. Is the election going to change giving? This last election?
Yeah, it might change the way we fundraise. I don't know how many people got bombarded by requests for money. It's shocking how much money could be raised in a short period of time for a cause that people believe in. But man, if we could do that in DRD world, we would be getting off to a pretty darn good start.
I still think people give to people, and that will remain regardless of your politics.
Betsy?
Well, I think that if the market is strong and people are doing well, the returns are there and they're incentivized to gift money, it's tax deductible. If we can eradicate some of the wars that are happening and some of the natural disasters, fundraising should remain strong. I mean, the loyalty that people have to Joslin Diabetes will remain at Joslin, and it's really the confluence of factors around market and other economic things that are going on about whether or not they feel comfortable gifting.
Okay. So Betsy, hang out with us for a second. If you have a question for Maureen, we're going to switch gears right now, go over to Stand Up to Cancer. And so Maureen, a lot of people have asked about Stand Up to Cancer because it's been so successful. Can you give us kind of a little bit on the genesis and from the beginning and how it started? And
yeah, well, thank you so much for having me today. It was incredible to listen to the sessions today. A lot of it went over my head, but I really tried to keep up, and it's incredible to see the work that you've accomplished thus far. And thank you, Eric, for inviting me, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this with all of you. There's a lot of similarities of what all of you discussed, a lot of the same issues, no matter what your cause is. As a nonprofit, I think we're all battling with saturation. We're all battling against other causes that have a sense of timeliness, and we're also battling with charitable fatigue coming off of COVID. So I think and just how to keep relevant and keep awareness for our causes. So I think we're all facing a lot of the same challenges and hurdles, but I think we're all finding our unique way to overcome it. I've been with Stand Up to Cancer since we founded Stand Up to Cancer. So I know you mentioned this year's our 16th birthday. We got our driver's license this year. And I started when I was all of 10 years old. Thank you very much. But it's really been incredible because I was in the room with the founders when they were ideating of what the vision of Stand Up to Cancer was. What did they hope to accomplish? And it was 9 women who were very fierce personalities, but as you talked about, Chris, a lot, all had a personal connection to cancer. Many of you in this room probably have a personal connection because 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women will be diagnosed in their lifetime. So they really wanted to understand at the time that they founded Stand Up to Cancer, one of the founders, Laura Ziskin, who is a prolific film producer who produced Pretty Woman, Spider-Man, like some small movies. She was actually battling metastatic breast cancer at the time. And so the question the founders all had was, why was Laura's cancer in 2008 being treated the same way that breast cancer had been treated for almost 40 years? What did they need to do to really move the needle in cancer research? And of course, none of them were scientists. They were all women from media and entertainment. They just knew that they had this untapped resource at their fingertips to help make it a top-tier issue. So how did they use their resources to make it a top-tier issue? But even further that, how did they fundraise and then use the dollars raised to really make an impact? So they met with the top researchers in the field, and they understood what was key was collaboration, not just within institution, but across institutions. And they also understood that being able to make larger grants to allow the researchers to focus on their research uninterrupted for a period of 3 years would also allow them to move their research from the lab to the bedside faster. So that was in May of 2008, we announced Stand Up to Cancer with a founding donor. Major League Baseball was our founding donor, and that helped launch Stand Up to Cancer. And in September of 2008, we hosted our first ever proactive roadblock telecast of its kind. And it was a night where 4 networks that typically competed against each other put their competition aside, didn't put aside the ratings, and came together for a cause that was important not only to the executives there, but also their viewers. And through that first telecast, we raised $100 million, which was unheard of. And cut to 8 months later, we launched our first 5 signature dream teams, which consisted of, they were grants from $6 to $20 million that were administered over a 3-year period. And our dream teams consisted of up to 50 researchers cross-discipline from multiple institutions. And so that's how Stand Up to Cancer launched.
So you talked about resources, right? So that's a big number, you know, raising $100 million, you're right out of the gate. So what are the resources that these 9 women and their cohorts able to bring together that made the difference?
I mean, it was really, they realized also corporate America really wanted to give, and they wanted to make an impact in cancer research, because they too had very strong personal connections, and not just from pharma and biotech, but from consumer side as well. It was important to consumer donors like Major League Baseball. Now we have American Airlines, MasterCard, to their customers. And they wanted to not only have an impact in charitable giving, but to be able to provide them with this platform of highlighting their charitable commitments and how their charitable commitment was advancing research across a multi-network telecast was key. It was invaluable.
And because EIF had partners in the media space, in the media landscape that were part of the fiduciary, did that help?
Yeah,
also?
so with each donor, and many of you maybe, I don't know how many people are baseball fans, but the World Series just aired. Bud Selig was the commissioner of baseball in 2008, and he himself was a melanoma cancer survivor. And so the 9 founders entered his office in 2008, and they would not leave until he committed to support Stand Up to Cancer. And it was actually his wife, Sue, who said, Bud, you have to say yes. And it was at that point he committed $10 million to help launch Stand Up to Cancer. And that was really incredible. But what we've created with them is even more powerful. Because since 2009, we have actually been integrated into their All-Star game and into Game 4 of the World Series every year with a moment of silence where everyone in the stadium holds up a placard for who they stand up for. And it is the most inspirational moment. You can hear a pin drop in these stadiums
Chris
of
and I were talking about
60,000
it after
people.
we had watched the
It's
game. We had a
extraordinary.
conversation the next morning,
Yeah.
and he said, "Did you watch the game last
It's-
night?" You know, and it was
The
incredibly
exposure,
powerful.
it's
Well,
crazy.
and it
yeah.
connects the players with the fans because they all have a connection. And I don't think there's any deeper connection than people have with their own local sports teams. And to feel that connectivity, that you have a cause in common, I don't think it gets much stronger than that. And so that is one way we've worked with one of our donors. It's very unique. It's what works with their fan base. It's what really resonates with their audience, and it's meaningful. And it shows that they are not only making a commitment to support research, but they're also making a commitment to highlight it and highlight their players who've been touched, their coaches who've been touched, but also amplify and provide a voice to their fans.
So can we talk about partners for a second?
Yeah.
Because stand-up is the gold standard. We even have conversations about this all the time. How do we move towards that? How do we become a stand-up to cancer, you know, in our space, in our sweet spot? So how did you bring partners on as the initiative grew?
So as it grew, we meet with donors. We obviously identify donors across different pillars of the industry who have personal connections to cancer or have supported cancer causes. And then we meet with them and understand what their goals are, not only from a cancer research space, understanding what cancer is important to them. Is it lung cancer? Do they want to fund breast cancer? Do they just want to support cancer research in general? And then what is the collective message that we create together to reach our collective audiences? What is success to them? And for many of them, it's also creating co-branded public service announcements. A public service announcement is a campaign that we create that provides educational information and provides public service, where it provides statistics or a place for people to go to get resources and to understand questions that that they should be asking their doctor about screenings. And so we work with our donors to create what that message looks like, make sure it falls within the guardrails or guidelines of being a public service announcement. And then we'll identify an ambassador that also reaches our collective audience. And then we'll develop the PSA with them, and then we will place it in donated media. And so that is one way that we work with our donors.
Can you tell people what donated media is?
Donated media is media that is donated across TV, radio, print, digital, and out of home. It's remnant ad space that they have not been able to sell, that they donate to causes that are important. And I know you spoke about your first PSA campaign, and your numbers are incredible. I mean, in infancy stages, because it gains momentum the longer it's in the market. So you'll see those numbers grow exponentially, especially after the election, which you mentioned. But it's a really incredible way for smaller nonprofits that may not have the ad dollars to buy advertising to really reach the public.
Okay, so you and I are kind of media junkies, right?
Yes.
We've been in, you know, I'm much older than you, so we've been in it a long time, right?
Not that much older.
So this landscape is changing
Yes.
drastically,
Yes.
exponentially, really fast. So what are you doing to kind of readjust?
Well, I know we've all kind of touched upon it. Our jobs are really to follow the ever-evolving media and talent and entertainment landscape. For our telecast, for example, in 2008, it aired across 4 networks. Our last telecast aired across 65 broadcasters and streaming channels, but the ratio keeps changing and shifting as streaming is becoming more the go-to for viewers. We are putting more of a focus in securing more streaming channels and more social platforms to carry our telecast. So that's one way we're shifting. For donated media, I am a junkie. Out of home. Many of you may not be familiar with out of home, but it's a non-traditional ad space that gets you where you're captive. So in elevators, when you're stuck in an elevator going up 9 floors and you're being fed a message, that is a really powerful time to be hitting people with our public service announcements. At the gas station, when you're golfing, it's now on golf carts. So that is an area that we're putting more focus on in digital. Digital, much more coveted instant gratification, because people can immediately click on your digital banners and hopefully go to your site. So that's a really coveted area. Print, sadly, is antiquated, and unfortunately, there are print publications, magazines, and newspapers folding on a regular basis. So we have to keep evolving our placement strategy to follow the media where it's going. And then for talent, I know we touched upon it, and I know Will and Kristen, we spoke about it, the young adults, getting people when they're starting to have charitable giving and volunteerism be part of their DNA, which a lot of high schools and colleges are now baking it into the curriculum. So how do we reach those audiences, especially with something like cancer or diabetes that feels like it's an older person disease? It's not. The rates of cancer diagnoses under the age of 50 are set to grow exponentially over the next 10 years. Will, you spoke about 26 years old. You probably had no friends who knew what chemo was that could provide you with support at that time. So how are we reaching them? Our talent. We're getting younger content creators. We're reaching the gaming space. Gaming raised a huge amount of money during COVID. Who knew that you can, St. Jude, gold standard of content creator and gaming, they raise over $10 million a year just through content creator and gaming fundraising streams. So that's an area we've been growing over the last 4 years, and that helps us reach an audience younger when they're still deciding on causes that are important to them, and hopefully they then grow with us.
What's it look like for stand-up for the next 5, 10, 20 years out?
Our new CEO, he was actually part of our scientific advisory committee since 2008, but he became our CEO in the last year, has set a couple of really lofty goals. One, to reduce cancer mortality rate by 25% over the next 10 years. And also, a lot of our focus has been on cancer. We've put a lot of funding into pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, which receive a lot of funding in general. And we've seen really positive responses. Our research has now led to 10 different cancer treatments for patients battling those diseases now. So now his focus will be more on underfunded, rare, more aggressive forms of cancer in our next 10 year of research.
So I want to open it up if there are any questions. We have a couple of minutes. If somebody wants to ask something.
You think the next generation is more philanthropic or less? I have 2 kids, and there's certain parts of the generation that drive me nuts. But I think they're more philanthropic. I think they're more empathetic.
I think that it's being built more into the curriculum than it was when I was growing up.
Learning about it earlier. Yeah.
And I know that just having kids who've gone through high school, volunteerism is a big part of the curriculum. And I also know a lot of companies have now integrated it into activities to do team building. So I do think the younger generation, they may not have deep pockets, but they're trying to define who they are through charitable giving.
So I think there was somebody in the back that wanted to ask a question.
I know it's been a long day.
Okay, no questions. Hold tight for a second. We're going to do a little bit of wrap up. Betsy, thank you. We're going to let you go. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. So before we get started, we just wanted to give you a little bit of level setting on where we are right now and what the next few months looks like in terms of our partnerships and our media relationships. And we talked a lot about PSAs and the importance of them and how we get them into the marketplace. For those of you that haven't seen, we launched our first public service announcement on July 16th. It didn't go in rotation until the 1st of August. We've had an incredible amount of success so far. So we want to show it to you, and then we can talk a little bit about it.
Mary Tyler Moore, I wanted to be Mary. That's how much I love Mary. Mary's legacy is that she's fundamentally shifted how we perceive women in entertainment.
Women like Mary Tyler Moore cut a path that I'm standing in right now.
You have no idea what you've meant to me. You were one of those women, a light.
My friend Mary Tyler Moore was diagnosed with diabetes at age 33 and suffered severe vision loss from this disease later in life. Mary often spoke of her dream to create an organization dedicated to preventing blindness from diabetes. Today, the Mary Tyler Moore Vision Initiative is a reality. MTM Vision is dedicated to advancing medical research to preserve and restore the vision of people living with diabetes. To learn more, please go to marytylermoore.org, because the sight you save may be that of someone you love.
So that was our first spot that went out. We plan on doing at least one a year. Because of our partnership with the Entertainment Industry Foundation, we have access to what Maureen was speaking about donated inventory throughout streamers, local affiliates, out of home, radio, digital. So for this first spot, within the first 3 months, 183 outlets have aired it across the United States. They include NBC, NBC affiliates, Fox affiliates, Peacock. I didn't see it during the Olympics, but Red Maxwell told us that it aired during the Olympics, which we were really proud of. It has been seen by more than 88 million people so far. The ad value to us as an organization that we don't pay for, that we would have had to pay for if it was a sponsorship arrangement, would have been close to $4 million. Our total social media research from it has been 5.5 million, and we've had over 200 million impressions from this spot already. Just a little bit about our website, the new website that's been launched. We've gained 1,500 new followers across our social media channels this year. We've had celebrities like Reese Witherspoon, Julia Louis-Dreyfus that have been promoting the public service announcement. We reached 15,000 new social media accounts since the launch of the PSA. Our website has 25,000 new visitors since the launch of the new website over the summer. We're averaging about 4,100 new visitors per month. Prior to the launch, we were averaging about 30 to 80. The increase represents 100-fold since the launch. We want to talk about moving forward some of the things we're doing. Some of you might have seen this. We have a partnership with Variety and Penske Media and all their digital platforms, which is Deadline, The Hollywood Reporter, Billboard Magazine. We have Robert was gracious enough to let them create the first Mary Tyler Moore Legacy Award to a deserving recipient. It was Kristen Wiig from Bridesmaids. You may know her. Robert presented her the award in June. Every year there will be another kind of fundraising event for us around some of their signature events like the Power of Women or the Power of Comedy. So Kristen is our first ambassador, and next year we're starting to work on that already. Some of you may know this. We have a commitment to do a reenactment of the original Mary Tyler Moore Show with CBS. So we're going to take an original episode, probably Chuckles the Clown, or some of you older folks that may know what these episodes mean, or the pilot, recast them with celebrities from today. Steve Carell playing Ted Baxter. We want Kristen to play Mary Tyler Moore, Wanda Sykes to play Rhoda. And so we're planning on a production in the second quarter of 2025. We are in negotiations with Reese Witherspoon and her Hello Sunshine media company to do a bio-series based on Mary's life, based on her 1993 New York Times bestselling book called After All. Robert's the executive producer of this miniseries. And finally, Robert is producing a Broadway musical based on Mary's life that is in development right now from an award-winning playwright. Has to stay under wraps until we finally get it, That's right. But as you can see, what we're trying to do is we are trying to bring together the assets that we have to actually, protect Mary's legacy. But there are a lot of people that want to tell her story. So Robert has, been gracious enough to let us run with this, to tell her story on several different platforms. And this is all for the first half of 2025. So I thank you. I know I went over my time a little bit, but thank you for the event, and safe travels, everybody. Robert's going to do some closing remarks.